Allan, what's going on, man? Welcome to Dad Edge, my friend. Good to have you.
I'm pumped to be here. Thanks for having me, Larry.
My pleasure. Life is hard. Succeed anyway.
It is.
Yeah, it is not sunshine and rainbows all the time, is it?
It is not. And the sooner we realize that, the better off we are.
But don't you think social media has maybe pulled the wool over our eyes just a little bit of like, oh, well, I see Allan on Instagram and I see him doing his six kids. He's been married for 31 years. Like clearly this guy has always been successful. There's never really been any hardships. Do you think people view other people like that quite often?
100%. I definitely do. And it was just really just very recent history. I mean, just a few years ago that I finally decided to start being a little more vulnerable and realizing the impact that I could have positively on encouraging people and letting them in a little more on the backstory of some of the hard that we have been through.
Yeah. So you used to be a police officer.
Yes, California Highway Patrol, state trooper, many states would call them, but in California, we're California Highway Patrol. I don't live in California anymore, but yeah, 5 years in California.
Did you have the motorcycle?
You know what? I didn't have the
Dang it.
motorcycle, Larry. I wanted the motorcycle. I could have had the motorcycle. I mean, I go to LA out of the academy, actually Santa Ana, which is technically Orange County. But Southern California, I mean, a lot of action happening down there. As many, war stories I could tell you. But I mean, I was seniority with like a year and a half on down there because, people don't last down there very long. They transfer out where they can afford to live. And I could have had a bike. And my wife, she just wasn't super excited about me riding on
Yeah.
two wheels. And I wanted to honor that because I was having plenty of fun with four.
You know where I'm going with this, right?
I don't. I don't.
No?
So go ahead.
Come on,
No.
man. We're about the same. Dude, one of my most favorite shows on TV
Chips.
when I, yes, sir. And you know what? What's funny is you put hair on top of your head, you look like John, kind of. It's
Okay.
Ponch and John a little bit. I see just some of the resemblances. I was sitting there thinking, like, man, like, I wonder if he had a motorcycle and he was like Chips, California Highway Patrol on the motorcycle.
I could buy that. I'll be John. I'll be
Yeah.
John. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
long were you in law enforcement for?
Well, 5 years with the CHP. Actually, 4 years, and I think it was 8 or 9 months. I think I had 3 or 4 months left to get fully vested. Fully vested meaning when I turned 50, which was a year ago, when I would have turned 50, I would have earned 3% for every year of service for the rest of my life, starting at age 50. So you put in the 5 year minimum, 3 times 5, 15%. I would earn 15% of my income starting at age 50 for the rest of my life. And I resigned 3 months, I think, before my 5th year because I didn't care about that at that point.
So,
Still don't.
well, yeah, well, tell me about that. A lot of people probably were like, "Hey, why are
They
you
thought I
doing
was
that?"
crazy.
Yeah.
They thought I was crazy. Um, well, I actually, my story is about, I don't know, a year or so before that. I mean, I grew up in the church, Larry. Memorized Bible verses, was in church like 3 times a week, grew up in what I call the Leave It to Beaver family. It was a great childhood as a young child. But it wasn't until, if I just fast forward, it wasn't until 28 years old, 27, 28 years old, my last year that I spent in law enforcement, that I got to a place in my life where I had everything I really wanted. I wasn't really entrepreneurial at the time like I am now. I had my beautiful wife, my 3 children of the 6 that we eventually had together, but 3 children and a vasectomy. So I thought I was done. That's a whole nother story. I had my F-250 7.3 liter dream truck at the time. It was a simple life, but it was everything I ever wanted. And I realized I wasn't happy. Realized there was got to be something lacking. And so gave my life to Christ and really just surrendered my life to him and just said, hey, wherever you want to send me, whatever you want me to do, like the answer is yes. Tell me what it is. And, the short version of that story is he led us to move from California to Georgia to be a part of starting a church. And that's the reason why I left law enforcement. That and the fact that I had realized by that point in time that I was way too driven. For me personally, I was way too driven to spend 30 years in doing that. I realized I was way too entrepreneurial to be a great government employee. And I'm thankful for all the brothers and sisters in blue that do that. Still to this day, it's even more difficult today. I can't imagine the climate most of them are in, but that's why I left.
Wow, man. Did was this, you mentioned a lot of things in there as far as, 3 kids, giving your life to Christ, starting something that you hadn't started yet. Did you have any experience with starting a church beforehand, or was this like, I think I'm just going to go do this?
No, it was a church that was already starting, and
Okay.
we had met the family that was the pastor in the family that was kind of leading it. It was starting in a home and very small. And so, yeah, I wasn't like the founding member of planting the church or anything like that. I just felt called to be a part of it during that season of my life.
And how did that go at the time?
It went great. We were there, a part of that church for 3 or 4 years. I forget exactly. It's some of the times, I would say it's some of the times when I've grown the most. Probably I grew the most, learned the most, had a great mentorship, and it was just a great time. It was really, really good experience.
That's really cool, man. That sounds like a huge, not to sound cliche, but a huge leap of faith.
It was a huge leap of faith. And I'm not going to lie, there were times when I'm sitting here going, what am I doing? I mean, I had given up a lot. My whole family was in California. I wasn't moving for a career. I didn't have a lot of money. Yeah, but I'd do it all over again.
And your wife her name's Nicole.
It's Nicole. Yes,
Okay. She grew up in an atheist home, correct?
she did. Yep.
Okay. So you go to her and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? I mean, what's her response to this? Have you lost your mind, or was she like, yeah, let's go?
Nicole's amazing. I mean, my brother used to say, my brother has since passed away, but my brother used to say, man, she would follow you, I don't know if you'd say to jail. I don't know if that's the right, I forget what word he used, but she'd follow you to the ends of the earth, basically, wherever you want to go, Alan. You're so blessed to have a wife like that. And it really is true. She's phenomenal. I mean, 22 moves in almost 31 years of marriage.
What?
And
Come on
everyone
now.
with the smile, 6 kids in tow. Yes, sir.
22 moves? Are you kidding?
Not kidding. I mean,
All
several
right.
of those were within law enforcement, but since then, there's been several others.
Oh my gosh. Okay. 22 moves. Like, dude, like, listen, we've only been, my wife and I have been married, Jess and I have been married for 20 years as of this year. And, we've moved 3 times. And it's funny, man. Like, the last house we moved out of, and I'm so glad we did. It was our least favorite house of the 3. But there was a part of us that were just like, should we just stay miserable just for the sake of not moving again? Because we just
Right.
loathe moving. And we're like, no, life is way too short, to not like where you live. So we need to go ahead and do that. But even now, I mean, we love our home, we love where we're at. But the thought of moving even again, like 4 times, like it's actually become like kind of a joke with my in-laws, because they're like, please don't say you're moving again, because it seems like it's every, 5 to 7 years. And but we're not, which is good. But how how did that one test you guys? Like, if you could just give us a glimpse for like an aerial 30,000 foot view of 22 moves on your relationship, like, what was that like? That's a lot of change.
I don't know how to answer that, Larry. I mean, there's a few things. One is it kept us from accumulating too much stuff. And it's amazing. I mean, if you've moved once, you know how easy it is to accumulate stuff. And so we were forced and we didn't have a lot of money in those early years. Most of those moves, we didn't have a lot of money. I guess I could say that. And so it was always self-moving, U-Haul. We've got 5 girls, 1 boy. And so, I mean, and they were really young at the time. So it wasn't like I had a bunch of strong teenagers to help carry heavy loads. So it was a lot of work. But we didn't really think about it. I mean, it was just always, we were just like, hey, what, there's always a purpose for moving. Sometimes in the early years, it was taking advantage of the 2 years that we'd lived in a primary residence and could, sell it and make the gains, capital gains tax free. And so that's why that's one of the reasons we would move pretty much every 2 years, just kind of trying to get ahead, trying to get ahead. And it was just what we did. And, Nicole was supportive and awesome. And I'm thankful. I mean, we're on the lake here in Nashville, and I would hope that we never move again. But you know what? My yes is still on the table. If God wants to call us somewhere else, we'll move, but it won't be for reasons like trying to, take equity and throw it into the next home. We're, I think, done with that at this point in our 50s now.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Might
We'll
talk to
see.
you like in a week. Be like, guess what? We're moving to St. Louis now. We're going to be neighbors.
You never know. Hey, we've been here. November will be 2 years, so that's pretty
Wow.
good. Yeah,
pretty
you
good.
never. So we can sell it tax free after November.
Well, you never know, right? Might just jump right back in. So, you have a book that's coming out. I mean, we're going to talk about a few different things here. Number one, you've been married for 31 years. Former, obviously, law enforcement. That goes back quite some time. 6 kids, with your youngest being 16. And I know that we had basically we had some pretty big things happen about 8 years ago when you were 43, and we're going to talk about how you bopped and weaved through that one. But I want to give the audience here a really cool glimpse of, you just got done with a project, you just got done with a book. As we launch this podcast, it's out, right? It's out in the world, and actually perfect timing. But tell us about the book and the mission.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you about the book. Thank you for the opportunity, Larry. It's something that God put on my heart a couple years ago as I'm coaching different individuals in my business. And we're talking about entrepreneurship, and we're talking about, financial freedom and independence. And I could just see so much of the limiting beliefs, and many of which I've had in the past and struggled with as well. So I could identify with, but so many of the limiting beliefs that I would keep running up against when talking to people that would again look at my life on the outside and say, well, that's great. You've got this great income and investments and a beautiful family, and you're healthy, and, a lot of the things someone may aspire to enjoy, and not knowing the real story of my life, not knowing really all the things, all the life's hard that we have been through and that we're still going through, Larry, even to this day. I mean, I've got one challenge of one of our 6 children that still, she's our firstborn, and I love her with all my heart. Obviously, she's 29, living on the streets of somewhere in LA. And when you see the pictures or videos of all the tents on the sidewalk, she's down there somewhere, strung out on drugs. So it's not like our heart has gone away, but the majority of the major trials and adversity that we've been through is in our past now. We're on the backside of. But anyway, I noticed that when I started sharing some of these things with them and just being more vulnerable, as I've come to get real comfortable with doing now, because of the end result of encouraging and building others up and giving them hope, essentially, is I could see, figuratively speaking, like scales would fall off their eyes.
Yeah.
And they would realize, wow, so you mean you built this, whatever this is, my marriage or my business or whatever, and while going through these things? Yes, I did. So there's hope for me then. I guess your life wasn't cushion, easy, and all that. And so that was when I had the idea a couple years ago to start the book. So I started on the book, Life's Hard, Succeed Anyway, 2 years ago. And finally, just, this September 21st, getting it out there, launched and in the world. So I'm really, really excited about it.
Wow. Can you give us a high level of what, what do the chapters look like? It's a very broad stroke, life is hard, succeed anyway.
Yeah.
The story I'm telling myself, and I haven't seen your book yet, but I have no doubt that it's amazing, is there's some deep roots there of perhaps mindset shifts. There's tactical things that you do. And maybe part of it is just the surrender of, you're a spiritual person and so am I. And I don't know about you, before, finding your faith and before me finding mine, I would always look to God and be like, why are you doing this to me, man?
Right.
This, if I follow you, isn't life supposed to be okay? And what I found is actually it's harder. Right. And there isn't one verse in the Bible, not one anywhere, that says that there is a promise of a pain-free life.
Right.
Not one, and I think that if we have the perception or the expectation that, hey, life should be, it should be enjoyable, it should be fulfilling, and at times it is, but there are times where it's not. But I'd really love to know some deep roots that you have here in the chapters.
Yeah. You just saying that just reminded me of one thing that's been encouraging to me when we talk about the Bible. A couple things, just real quick before I answer your question about the book, is I have right in my bio of my Instagram, Facebook, all the different things, John 16:33. And that passage really encourages me because you might say, well, why does it encourage you? Well, it says in this, different translations say it differently, but in this world, you will have trouble. It's not like you might have trouble. It's not like it's going to, might be easy, might be hard. No, we're told it's going to be hard, but, take heart because I've overcome the world. That's the good news, is we know how it ends in the end. And the other thing that really encourages me is as you look at the Bible, I mean, there is not, I mean, you would look long and hard to find someone that gets called to do anything great. All the heroes of the Bible, if you will, they're called to do something great where it was easy, where they just walked into it and it was easy. Most of them had some major obstacles, to overcome. Moses was like, I'm not a speaker. I can't communicate. I stutter. What are you talking about? Send my brother Aaron. Like every single one of them, they had some major challenges. David was small and frail or, young, teenager, or whatever, and he's going to go face a giant. Like there were some major obstacles to overcome. And I find it interesting when people, especially people that are people of faith, and they're like, well, I think I'm called to go this way. And then they run into hard. They're like, oh, well, it must not be meant to be, or it must not be, that must not be my calling, or must be needing to go another direction. Like, no, because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong. Because it's hard may mean it's right. But as far as the book, it's a lot of mindset with some practical stuff. Like my objective in writing the book, Larry, was to tell my story, but to not have it be a storybook. Everybody has a story. There's plenty of great stories out there, entertaining story. Let me say it that way. There's plenty of entertaining stories, plenty of storybooks, but I wanted to take my story and pull out the lessons, the mindsets I've learned, the tactical things I do on a daily basis to help other people set themselves up in the best position possible to succeed anyway. And by the way, I define success as so much more than just financial success. I know it's easy when we say, hey, he's successful, she's successful, I want to be successful, to think finances, to think monetarily. And yes, that's a measure of success, no doubt. I want to be financially successful, but it's so much more than that. In fact, financial success is not the top of my list of measures of success. And so living a successful life to me is living a successful life. And I know you would agree with this. It's living a physically successful life, a spiritually successful life, a relationally rich, life. And of course, a financially successful life, but to help people really step into and walk out a successful life despite their challenges. Because the one thing I've learned, and the sooner, I said this earlier, the sooner we come to grips with the fact that life's going to be hard and the challenges of my past are my past, but there's more ahead. And so walking into the next wave, I like to, it's a water theme. The whole book is water theme because in my mind, I see waves as the challenges as waves, and I see them coming, and I see they come in sets, and I see some. I used to surf in college, not very well, but some are big, some are small. They vary in size, they vary in frequency. And that's just like challenges, adversity, trials, call them what you want. They're coming. There's more to come. And the sooner we get our head wrapped around how to handle them and how to live a successful life, the better we can go through them. And that's the objective of the book, is really just to help people. I don't care so much how many copies of the book I sell. I don't care if I make $1 off the book. What I do care about is impacting people's life like these things have impacted my life.
Man, that's really good. And especially for our audience, we need to hear this kind of stuff. I want to go back to when you were 43, which was last year. And, but no, you, all kidding aside, 8 years ago, you had some serious, you had some waves, right? And probably a set of waves that you maybe, number one, never thought you'd encounter. But number two, you did encounter them. But I would love for you to just share that journey with the audience.
Sure. Yeah. It is the darkest season of my life. And I believe it will always be the darkest season of my life because of a lot of the things I share in the book, and the vision that I have for my life now. And people ask me all the time, like, what do you think is the number one thing to help someone succeed, despite life's hard? And I think first and foremost, it's a relationship with my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But second to that, it's having a vision. The Bible says, without a vision, the people perish. And if we don't know where we're going, why we're going there, what's our mission, what's our cause, it's got to be so much more than just a paycheck. And who we're going there with, our community, our tribe, then we're not set in a very strong position to handle the waves, to handle the punches in the face, But to answer your question specifically, back in that season, I really wasn't prepared. I was 43. I was making great income. Again, like I said before, everything looked good on the outside, but I didn't realize how ill-equipped I really was, because even in my career, I couldn't even tell you why I was doing my career. I mean, if you would have asked me back then, I'd say to provide for my family, I think would have probably been the answer. And there's nothing wrong. There's everything right about that. But there's a lot of things that can provide for our family. There's a lot of ways to make money. And I don't think I could have answered that. And so I wasn't very well equipped for what happened. What happened was a whole series of events happened. But my father, after 43 years of marriage, divorced my mother. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to that story. He started running around on her. And you got to understand, too, that this is in a small town, relatively small town where I grew up, and where my grandfather was a broker and started a construction company. And so his signs, real estate signs, for sale signs with Blain Realty, at back then, were in yards all around the small town, like our name was known from that. And then my father, second generation home builder, and now me, third generation, growing up in this town. And at 43, when I was 43, they split. He leaves her. It really, in the way it happened, and I won't go into all the detail, but everything that's surrounding that wreaked havoc on my family. So I'm the oldest of 4 children, and it's me and then my younger brother and 2 younger sisters. One of my younger sisters at that time, 39 years old and married, she ends up, uh, because what I should have told you, Larry, too, is it sent my mother into a deep, dark depression. Deep, like bedridden, like not even getting out of bed, being able to get out of bed to go to the bathroom, kind of bedridden. Not even able to attend what I'm going to tell you what in a minute here was her daughter's funeral, that kind of bedridden. It set me in the position where I had to negotiate the settlement on behalf of my mother, because she needed somebody to help her negotiate the settlement against my own father. So an already strained relationship between me and my father, which I haven't really gone into, but at that point caused that relationship to pretty much be destroyed, because my father wanted to take advantage of my mother and I wouldn't let him in that settlement. So it wrecked the little bit of relationship I had left with my father, sent my mother into a deep, deep, dark depression, multi-year. She calls it now her Great Depression. I mean, it was a multi-year depression that really we just got her out of about a year ago, May of 2022. We moved her from California here to Nashville area with us. And that's been a wonderful, God-sized, miraculous story, because she just drove to Alabama. She's visiting her sister down there. She's living a normal, healthy, happy life today, but happy to report. But so that caused, I can't say that caused, but on the heels of that, and no doubt that was a factor, my 39-year-old sister took her life. And my only other sister at that time ends up going to trial on felony charges that I'd rather even not have to talk about. And she was the soccer mom, married to an architect, mother of 4, 37, 38 years old. And all this is happening in my hometown, where I'm running a very successful real estate, construction, home flipping, building, developing, property management, kind of all things real estate business. I am so just taken back by all this that I start making poor choices. I start drinking. I end up with the CHP officer that was the DUI king, arresting 15 to 20 a month, finds himself behind bars. That's me with a DUI. And this is everything I just described to you, Larry, was in a period of a year and a half ish.
Whew.
I mean, it was all compressed. Shortly right after that, my brother, who was the top Keller Williams agent in the nation, doing like 1,500 transactions a year, him and his team. He didn't even have a brokerage. He was just a realtor with a team, pulling in $6-7 million a year in income. He takes his life. And so it was the darkest season of my life. It caused me to reevaluate everything, literally everything. Because when I find myself in jail, I'm like, what am I doing? This is not me. It's not what I stand for. It's not who I am. What's going on? Okay, what am I doing and why am I doing it? So that was my moment in time that's literally has changed my life, because the last 8 years have been the sweetest, most relationally rich, healthiest, financially beneficial. I mean, in every way. There's been challenges. I told you my daughter, one of our 6 daughters, is living on the streets of LA. So it's not easy still, but it's been incredible. And I've learned a ton. And I'm still learning a ton.
My gosh, man. Well, first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about your brother and sister. And I'm really very curious. I want to ask you a question, and I don't want to minimize that because I know that that's obviously huge to lose a sibling, especially in such a way. Do you mind if I ask you something about spending time? I'm guessing you're probably only in jail one night.
Yeah, just one night.
Yeah, I would love, again, not to minimize what happened with your siblings, but I put myself in that position of you being a father and a husband, an entrepreneur, somebody who's succeeding, in life and that kind of thing. And you find yourself making a mistake and, you're in jail for the night. And I can only imagine the things that are going through your mind. Like, take us back to that evening and take us back to that time. What is going through your mind?
Man, I love the question. It's a great question. I have no problem with the question, so don't take this wrong. But it's hard to even want to go back there and remember.
100%.
It's painful because I'm so humiliated when I think about it. It humiliates me. There's so like I'm just like right now I'm flooded with emotion. Even just thinking about it, because it's so hard. But I felt I felt like a loser, honestly. And I never really viewed myself as that. I was the high school quarterback. I played baseball in college. I married an incredible woman. There's a lot of reasons why I had to be, well, I guess you could say prideful, but just confident in a healthy way. But I felt so low, Larry. I felt I'd let my wife down. That was the night I was supposed to come home. Like, I was traveling for work. I should have been home that night. I never showed up. I didn't answer my calls because I didn't have my phone with me. I mean, what my wife must have, what I know, what she's told me, what she felt. And then knowing that and feeling that and the repercussions of that, it was horrible. Yeah, but so many mixed emotions, because part of me was like, dude, I got to get this thing figured out. And the other part of me, even back then, this is what's embarrassing to even say. And I told my wife this back then. I said, Nicole, I just feel like going to some faraway place, like some deserted island or whatever, just some third world country, let's say a beach on some third world country, and just kind of drinking my life away. That in that moment, that's kind of how I felt, mixed with, what did I just do? Like, I never want to
Yeah.
see alcohol the rest of my life. This is not me. So it was I was messed up. I was really messed up over the whole situation because I was already in pain. I was already hurting over so
Yeah.
many of those things I mentioned.
Well, I think that there's two types of people that end up a night in jail like that, right? They're the ones that are just like, oh, this is kind of what happens to me, whatever. And then there's the other, which I can relate to, which is like, this is so far removed from who I am as a
Yeah,
human being. I can't even believe I'm here right now, right?
right.
The story I'm telling myself, though, Alan, is that has probably made you a more compassionate and empathetic person to other people who have gone through dark times.
100%. And I don't know what prideful, arrogant person would describe themselves as prideful and arrogant. So this might sound kind of weird, but even though I don't think that I ever was that guy, or that anybody would ever view me as prideful and arrogant, one thing that I think a weakness to my personality is I'm very type A, perfectionistic, and it's an asset in my life. And it also can be because I'm the hardest on myself, but it also can be when it comes to parenting or even marriage or having employees. I had, 50 employees at one time before I got into the business I'm currently in these past 8 years. But it can be hard when you're so hard on yourself. It's hard not to expect so much of other people too, and not be able to empathize with them because, hey, come on, what's wrong? Let's just show me the results. Let's just get it done. Because that's how I would talk to myself. And it has helped me so much be so less judgmental. It's like, no matter what it may look to me like on the outside, when I look at someone's life, man, I don't know their backstory because I realize nobody knew mine. And how in the world can I judge them for what they may or may not be doing, not really understanding? So you're right, empathy has been huge. God's used it as a huge blessing. And now I can look back and go, man, I can tell you every challenge I've been through, every hard time, I can see now the fruit of it. Even the self-inflicted ones, I can see the fruit of it. So for that, I'm grateful.
Same. I went through a bit of a crucible myself back in 2017. So about 6 years ago, and where I was served a big slice of humble pie. And it was very hard. Long story short, I was training for an ultra event. I was training for Mark Divine's Seal Fit event, the Kokoro Challenge, and just got really dumb, to be quite frank, with my training. I was going to like crazy extremes because I was like, man, I'm gonna have to endure like 50 hours of absolute hell, right? So I got to be ready for that. But I was doing ridiculous exercises, and I ended up frying my adrenal system completely, just overtraining myself to death. I didn't realize that at the time. All I knew is I couldn't sleep. And I went through 33 days, man, of sleeping an hour and a half to 2 hours a night, lost about 30 pounds, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My physical, mental, emotional health was absolutely wrecked. It was horrible. And I reached the point where I was in my doctor's office 3 times over that 33-day period, and my doctor's has horrible bedside manner. And he literally looked at me. He's like, I don't know what the hell you're doing, man. He goes, but you're gonna die. He goes, you're gonna have a life altering event. You're either gonna have a heart attack, a stroke. You're gonna be a vegetable. If you don't get this sleep thing figured out. And he was throwing every drug imaginable at me, and we couldn't get it worked out, and I just could not sleep. And then as I zip up this costume of my 7-year-olds, is I love summertime.
Love
That's
it.
what this is Dad Edge podcast, right?
That's
So there you go.
right.
Is that good? Is that good? Yeah. All right. There you go. Give me some. Oh, I'm sorry. He's Deadpool.
I love it.
But I became. I gotta watch what I say right now, but I became very at the end of my rope. I'll put it that way, and I think you know where I'm going.
Yep.
And I admitted that to a healthcare professional when I was in the ER, and I got Deadpool in the background. And this doctor looked at me and he goes, okay, well, he's like, we're going to put you, he's like, I'd like to admit you to the hospital. I'm like, great. That's what I'm here for. He's like, yeah, I really don't think you're jiving with me. It's like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I can't put you in the regular hospital. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, you're all your critical, your blood pressure and heart rate and everything. Like, you're not, like, I can't put you in I was like, where are you going to put me? He's like, well, I'd like to offer up, you going to the behavioral hospital for like 2 or 3 days. And I'm like, the mental hospital? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, we don't call it that though. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, man. Like, that's no, 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 no. That's not me. I was like, I just need, I need like some care. Like, I need someone to for me to just have some rest and someone to tell me how I can like hit the reset button on this sleep. He goes, yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. And I was like, but over there? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, nope, that's not me. I'm not doing it. And he looked at me. He's like, okay. He's like, well, are you going to be okay? tomorrow if you can't sleep tonight? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. He goes, okay. He's like, what about a week from now, man? A week from now? He goes, I want you to look me in the eye and tell me. He goes, you've gone 33 days. We're talking 40 days, man. Are you going to be here in a week? Just level with me. And I'm like, I couldn't answer that question. And I broke. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I feel like I'm a burden to my entire family right now. I can't do anything. I can't work. I was like, and there's a part of me that just wants to be out of here so I'm not burdening anybody. He's like, yeah, he goes, this is where type A, competitive, successful people like you have a serious problem with getting help, right? Or getting humbled, as he called it.
Yeah.
He's like, but I highly encourage you to get humbled and allow somebody else to help you. And I did. And I sat there that first night, and it was, I make it sound like it's like a padded room it's not like that at all. It was just a regular hospital floor, just had my own room, and like everything was like totally ordinary. Except for, you're there for that reason, and they don't let you leave until you're ready to go home, and, and you're healthy, quote unquote. And I did, I stayed there 3 days, but I sat there and I had that moment. Like I share that with you because I had that moment like you did. I'm like, what in the world is even happening right now?
Yeah.
Like I'm like fit, healthy guy. I'm a dad. I have my own business. I'm successful, like all these things, like, right. And I'm like, how, why, right? This is not even who I am. But it literally, that experience became the experience that allowed me to remember this ain't going to be all sunshine and rainbows your whole life. And you're going to have to learn. And what I can tell you, I used to have zero compassion. I wouldn't say zero compassion, less compassion for people that I would work with, they would come to me and be like, man, I have depression, I have anxiety. I'm like, you need to get that out of your head, man. Like that's in your head. And I experienced in that 33 days, both, like, and it gave me real world experience of like, wow, this is, people do deal with this,
Right.
and it's made me a more empathetic person. So there was a reason I asked you that question. Cause I understand that moment in time where you're like, how did we even get here?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and the one thing I would add to that is I try to remember that feeling. The one piece of that I do want to keep remembering is sometimes I'll be quick to want to, even in my own family, I'll want to like be hard on somebody, or be judgmental of a child, or maybe even my own spouse. And I try to, I don't always successful, but sometimes God will use that to bring to mind to go, Allan, what was that feeling you had back when you were in jail? Like I was the lowest of low. Nothing my kids could have done. Nothing my wife could have done. Well, I can't say nothing, but nothing they've ever done to this point would have phased me. It would have all been less than the significance of how I let them down in that moment. Like, who would I be to be nitpicking because I'll make this up? Someone didn't take out the trash or whatever. Okay. When I'm sitting there in jail. Does that make sense, Larry? So, like, I try to remember that, like, hey, this is where you were. This is where you could be in another scenario, in a heartbeat, in the future. It's possible. You're not all that, Allan. You're just not. And you need to keep that in mind, and not be so hard on other people. So yeah, I love that you brought that out. It's been very, I'm sure my family appreciates that aspect of it, even though they'd rather me not put them through that pain.
No, yeah. I'm curious. Was Nicole, because I think I want to bring this back to marriage, is why I'm asking this question.
Okay.
Every marriage, I don't care how happy we are, right? There's going to be a time, there's going to be times, there's going to be seasons, there's going to be challenges and hurdles, and it will test even the most quote unquote unbreakable marriage out there, right? And if you really look at statistics out there, we're always talking about the divorce rate. So we clearly know how many people don't end up together.
Right.
What we don't talk about are the couples that do stay together, which actually those couples, if you look at the research, are divided up into three separate camps, actually crazy enough, equally, like one third, one third, one third. One third are happy, wouldn't change much. The second camp has settled. They really don't have much of a connection with their spouse, their roommates, their friends. Everything's okay, but could be way better, but it's not knocking on divorce's doorstep yet. And then the third one is complete and total separate lives, zero connection whatsoever. They're just waiting for the kids to move out and then they're gone. So, but you take that in consideration and you take these speed bumps. I'm so curious as to what did you and Nicole lean on during that time that allowed you guys to recover? Here you are 31 years into your marriage. You rave about her like you just met her last week, right? Like you guys in my mind are like, or have reinvented the honeymoon phase. I'm not sure, but it's amazing. And it's a beautiful connection, but that doesn't happen without work and without trials.
Right. So the question is, what did we do to
Yeah.
kind of get through the hard and still come out the other side in the 1/3 of the percentage, or I would even say the 1% that just
Yeah.
not only love each other, but like being together every moment of the day if we could be. Um, Again, I think God did a miracle. I believe that with all my heart, but I'm going to say more than that as my answer, because I think the first thing I thought of besides that in practical terms is when I started questioning everything. All that whole season caused me to question everything I was doing. Up to that point, I'm running a $40 million business, financially doing well, but I had my lot of travel, a lot away from home, missed way too much during that 9-year season with my family. And I have no doubt in my mind that that's a piece of the puzzle. I'll never know the size of our daughter, who is the firstborn, that took the brunt of my incompetency as a father. A lot of the things I would tell you, if you asked me what would advice would you give, like not to do, for all of our fathers, like not to do, what mistakes did you make? I mean, I could tell you, but I made them with her. But also during that season, I also started evaluating again what I was doing for a career, why I was doing it, which was what I was spending most of my waking hours doing. It was we were kind of on two separate. I thought about, like, how many hours are we together? I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that talks about if you want a great relationship. I mean, the studies show you've got to spend time together, a significant amount of time, not that you have to, spend all day together, and have conversations about life, and you're doing life together. So we started a business together, Larry, and that's after I kind of reevaluated everything. We started a side business together because I didn't walk away from my business. We started a side business together that over the course of the next 16 months. And that was during that season. I mean, we were in that season of that business. In fact, hosting a 3-day event, my wife and I together, Friday, Saturday, Sunday event. On the Friday, my brother took his life. I mean, I got the call at 11:30 a.m. People were already showing up for the event. And it's our event for about 100 people in our organization at the time. And we're just kind of starting out in our business. And anyway, so we had this together that we started doing. And I feel like that the mission, that shared mission of what we were doing together and what we have been doing together now for 8 years has been a glue, like a glue. I mean, we get to talk not only about our children, we're about empty nesters. Of our 6 children, the only one under 19 years old is a 16-year-old. And so we got one minor in the home, one high schooler left in the home. And we're not excited to like have her gone, but we're ready. Like when the time is there and we're empty nesters, we're like, this is great. Like, we're not going to look at each other and go, who are you? We're not only parenting together, we're not only sharing a bed together, we're building a business together, we're building communities together, we're teaching and we're training. And so it's so fun. So we're passionate about what we do. So, and we get to do it together. And Nicole, I will never forget that first year of business together when I still had my full-time business, which I was co-owner in, before I gave the company away. I literally gave the company away. That's a whole nother story. But she goes, Allan, now I see why, people have affairs at work. When you spend so much time together, it builds bonds. It builds relationships. That's how relationships are built. And she's like, I am loving all this time with you and this common ground. In addition to our faith being in common, and our parenting and our marriage and our home, we now have the thing most people spend most of their waking hours doing, making a living together. So that's practically for us. That's just our story. Huge, huge, huge thing for us.
Wow, man. Well, that is pretty remarkable. Was there 31 years, and you guys have definitely been through the ups and downs. Are there things that you do that allow you to elevate each other during the good times? So, you know, Jessica and I, the way we operate within our marriage and the way that we also train our guys, you know, in our community is what we focus on grows and what we focus on expands.
Right.
So many people are so focused on what is wrong and broken, which puts a huge spotlight on what's wrong and broken, which puts it front of mind versus, you know, what can we do and how can we double down on the things that are working? I think a lot of it it's like the same type of comparison of, you know, you take somebody, you're into fitness, I'm into fitness. You know, you take somebody who, why do you work out? Well, I work out because I don't want to be fat and I don't want to be unhealthy. And that's not the most, in my mind, that's not really exciting or motivating. You take somebody else who, well, why do you work out? Well, I work out because I want to have more energy for my kids. I work out because I want to be more confident. I work out because, like, I'm going to do a Tough Mudder and I've never done one and I can't wait to see if I can break my time. It's like all these things that we get to go do versus the things that we're running away from or avoiding. But as far as reflecting on things that work really well in your relationship that you and Nicole double down on, what are those things?
Um, Great question. I mean, it's kind of cliche, but we prioritize spending time together. We not just our business quote unquote meetings and business events and all that, but we literally, I mean, we're dating each other all the time. You know, multiple times a week if we can, but like minimum once a week, we're gonna go on a date. Trying to get quarterly getaway, not trying to, I shouldn't say trying to, we're doing it. Quarterly times where we're getting away, even if it's just for a weekend once a quarter and at least once a year. We usually do 2 or 3 times a year, but kind of our minimums are once a year, an extended week or two trip together. So that's huge. We're also like we're planning and we're strategizing for goals of like where we're going. And I think I want to answer this part of the question and kind of tie back into parenting too, because we're created. I know you know this, but we are all created to live on purpose and mission and create something and accomplish and serve and do all these things. We're hardwired for that. And when we tell our kids, and this is another one of my huge mistakes, when we tell our kids, you can't do this and you shouldn't do that and you shouldn't say this or you shouldn't, you know, listen to this or watch this or go here or hang with them or whatever they can't do, instead of focusing on the things they are called to do and the person they are called to be and that they aspire, you know, hopefully aspire to be, you know, it's not helpful. For the most part, it's not going to be helpful. And same thing in our marriage. It's like we're always strategizing and planning, like, what's our next goals? What's our goals for our family? What's our goal? All the areas, health, personal, physical, relational goals, business goals, financial goals. And so we're going towards a shared mission. We know where we're going. We know why we're going there. We know who we're going with. And I think that's huge. I mean, I think that's the answer, honestly. It's the glue that holds us together.
You said so much there. Do you mind if I just kind of take piece by piece? And
Yeah.
because I want to put some pieces together for these men in the audience. A lot of guys come to me and they're like, dude, I just want to get close to my wife. What is the simplest thing I can do? And I always tell them the same thing that you just told us. I was like, take her out on a date. Like, when was the last time you were on a date? Some guys will tell me like, I don't even remember. Like, it's been years, right? Or well, we don't have time for that. I always respond with, you don't have time not to. You got to be a couple. You got to be a married couple. Otherwise, or just be satisfied with, you know, what you have, which is you reached out to me because you want something different. And I think it's really important to have that date time. But what I think, Allan, most important is the story that I'm telling myself is when you take Nicole out on that weekly date, you don't just stare at each other or just
Mhm.
stare at your food or get on your phones and
No,
just share space. Like the I get the feeling there's a rich conversation and connection that happens on your weekly date nights. Is that correct?
100%. Yeah.
So what does that look like? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you, because many men listening to this are like 31 years, man, you've already talked about everything. You already know her. There's nothing new, which I would challenge. I've been married 20. I'm still finding out things about my wife.
Yeah.
Get this, man. This is kind of funny. And this just, I should be more observant with this stuff, but I never see my wife eat sandwiches, like ever. She doesn't eat gluten. So she doesn't eat, never eat sandwiches, like ever. And she made a sandwich the other day with gluten-free bread. And I saw her take the mayonnaise and the mustard and mix it together. And I was like, mustard? Because I knew she loved mayonnaise. And she's like, yeah, I love them mixed together. And I'm like, you do? She's like, yeah. I was like, when did that start? She's like, since I was a kid. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I had no idea. I thought you liked mayonnaise. I had no clue you like mustard. She's like, oh, I love it. She goes, and actually, truth be told, on my burgers, mustard, mayonnaise, and ketchup. And I was like, I just hardly ever see her eat that stuff. So I just don't know. But I'm like, man, and there was something else that happened, a conversation we were having, and I was like, oh my God, I did not know that about you. Right. So I'm
Right.
still finding out things. But
Yep.
for you, how do you, what are the things you're doing on that date? Like conversations,
Yeah.
connection? How do you do it?
I'll tell you, but that story just reminds me is we all want to be known. We want to be known. Human nature. I mean, women arguably more than men, but we want to be known. I know as a man that I want to be known too. How I know is because there's been times where I think Nicole should know this. Haven't you seen me? Okay, put mustard on my sandwich, and that I don't put mayonnaise because I don't use mayonnaise or whatever. The scenario is okay. She knows this, but I'm making this up. But I can't think of an example. But there's been things even recently where I'm like, Nicole, you didn't know? I mean, like I want her to know something that she should know, I think in my mind anyway, because she should have seen me do it over and over and over and over again. And I'm a man. How much more probably do most women want to be known? And so that kind of ties back into the question, or to answer your question is I like asking questions and be in fact yesterday or 2 days ago, Larry, our pastor of our church, Robbie Gallaty, great friend of mine. I've had him on my podcast, great guy. But I noticed a post months ago, and I'm finally getting around to doing it, but months ago that he or his wife posted on Instagram about one of their date nights. They had like a card deck. I don't know if any of you or your listeners have even seen it. I hadn't seen it before, but it's called Date Deck. I think it's called Date Deck. I may be saying it wrong, but it's 50 questions, 50 cards, 50 questions to start a conversation, right? And us guys, we need that help. I need that help. I'll speak for myself. I need that help. I need ideas. I mean, I'm always thinking business and creative. How can I, leverage this or leverage this or leverage technology or be better, go bigger, bigger, better, faster, more impactful, serve more people? Like, I mean, my wheels are always turning. If we gave half of that energy to how we could know our wives better, serve them better, oh, women are wired, and I know it may be hard for some even hearing this that have really challenging marriages and maybe what seemingly difficult wives and all that. And I'm not discounting any of that. But let me tell you my experience. I've never had the challenging, difficult wife, but we've had some challenging, difficult times and some seasons where it was just very, very tough. And I'm sure on both sides. But when I finally made the decision that I am so over this 50-50 marriage thing, the 50-50 doesn't work. Skip the 50-50. It's not 50-50. It's 100%. I'm giving 100% to this thing. She can give zero, and she never gave zero. She's always been amazing, but she can give zero or she can give 100 too. Regardless, I'm giving 100. It was amazing. She was already a great wife. But what happened to our marriage? It was almost like she changed. I mean, she was already great, but it was like, where did you come from? And all I'm doing is just I'm all out. I'm all in. I'm burning the boats, which I should have done on day one of our marriage. Was just too ignorant or immature or whatever to realize this. And now it's things like I love the simple things that they take intention. They don't come natural, but leaving sticky notes around. I love getting flowers when, you know what? Sometimes I don't even get flowers on Valentine's Day. And Nicole doesn't even care because I get her flowers so many times that aren't. expected that who care. I mean, this is just Nicole. I'm not saying someone else's wife shouldn't care, but she just doesn't care. Like, I want to do what's unexpected. I want to surprise her. I want to do that because those are the things that are, I think, even more meaningful. And those are the things we did when we were trying to woo our wife, our girlfriend,
Yeah.
when she was, right? So it's like, why
Yeah.
stop doing that? And what she gives back, and I'm not doing it uh, with God's help. I'm not doing it for what I can get out of it, but it is mind blowing. I never could have imagined that someone could give back so much. And can I give you one practical thing I love
Please.
asking on
Yeah.
our dates?
Yeah.
I love asking the 1 to 10 question. And I don't know if you've heard this before. I mean, obviously everyone's heard about, rate something 1 to 10, but here's the question. Nicole, how do you feel like our marriage is doing? And these are questions that aren't fun to ask, man. These are not fun to ask. They take courage, but it's worth it. How do you feel like our marriage is doing on a 1 to 10 scale? 10 being you wouldn't change a thing. It's perfect. It's amazing. And 1 being it's the worst marriage on the planet. What would you say? And then if we can have the humility and the grit to just smile, to receive whatever number we get. And sometimes I'm a 9.5. And sometimes I'm a 2. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the reality of it. And I am okay with that. But here's the most important follow-up question is it does not matter the number. I mean, it does, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. She says a 6. Great. Tell me, what do I need to do? What can I do to get us from a 6 to a 10? Because a 6 isn't good. I am not satisfied with the 6. I want you being honest. So I love the 6, but I want a 10. I want a marriage that's a 10. What needs to change? But those kind of things, like even if I'm not even able to execute the request, I mean, I should be willing to try. What does that say to our wife? It says, I
Mm-hmm.
am in this for you, all in, all in. And it's the best.
I love that, man. There's a lot of key takeaways in there as far as like being humble and humility and taking feedback for what it is, and I think a lot of people don't have that hard conversation. You know, I I honestly think that if you don't create space to have a conversation like that, to just say, where are we at? What happens is this is what I think would change the game in so many marriages. So like if you're the person asking the question, have the humility and be prepared for what's going to come your way. And
Yeah.
I think, and not, to be quite frank, I think you should try. It's hard. I've been doing this long enough now where sometimes I have to brace myself because I go through the same exercises with Jess. And I'm like, I know something's going to come back that's going to be hard for me to hear. But what's harder is if I never hear it and she gets resentful and distant, and all of a sudden emotional resentment has set in. And then it creates this divide between us that metastasizes and kills our relationship. And then one day, 3 years from now, she looks at me and she's like, I don't know if I want to be married anymore. Because that's what happens. It's the things that go unspoken or the things that don't happen in a connected conversation with psychological safety. Then what you're doing is you're creating a relationship that could be metastasizing because of the resentment. I'll share this with you as well, is that I recently went through an exercise with Jessica where we sat down and we had 2 columns. I feel most loved when, and I feel most unloved when, right? The whole goal of that is for me to clearly get a good picture of this is what makes me feel most loved, right? And I'm like, okay, great. I'm that's easy. I'm a dude. I'm visual. I know these are the top 5 things. I can double down on these things. I can do them more frequently. I can do them more often. I'm the same way you are. I will put a card on my wife's pillow, sink, whatever. It doesn't have to be a birthday, holiday, anything. Cause I know she's like, when you write me a card, oh my God, like, and you're very specific about something that you see me do or appreciate about me. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Right. At the same token, my goal is to eradicate the ones that make my wife feel unloved. And here's what I'll tell you. My wife shared with me some things that make her feel unloved. She's like, when I'm talking to you and you have your phone in your hand and you think you're listening to me, but you're not, she's like, that makes me feel very unloved. She's like, so it hurts my feelings. She goes, but I also know it's kind of part of who you are. And I'm like, no. We're not settling for that. I was like, I can be better about that because the last thing in the world I want you to feel is that I'm not hearing you or seeing you. So my vow to you is that when you're talking to me, that I'll set the phone down, but at the same time, you have to take a deep breath and be like, there's going to be something coming my way. It's a little
Right.
tough, but I'd rather know it than not.
100%. 100%. And
Yeah.
I think it's so important too to ask the follow-up question, if I could take this a little deeper, is when they come back with that, what do I want to do? I want to defend. It's like, well,
Yeah. You want to
oh
defend
yeah, we want to
100%.
defend because we've
Yeah.
got our perspective. Well,
Yeah.
okay, you got the phone in your hand. It's like, well, you don't understand because I'll tell you why I have the phone in my hand. Oh, so if we could not defend and instead ask the question, you know, how does that make you just the follow-up questions? I mean, it's the things I do in business. It's like, why wouldn't I do it in my marriage? Like really getting to the root of let's peel the onion. Let's get to the real issue. And how does that make you feel? Why does it make you feel? And then repeating it back. Okay, so if I understand you, I mean, think about someone doing that for you, asking you some follow-up questions because they showing they really want to understand your point of view, and then saying it back to them. So Larry, if I understand what you're saying, I heard you say da 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 da. And they can come back and tell us, no, you idiot, you don't listen well. Or, no. Or they can say, and they'll frame and they'll clarify, or they'll say, yeah, that's it. And then the last thing I love asking is there anything else? You just told me, I asked you, how do we get from a 6 to a 10? And you told me this thing and we peeled the onion and I asked, how does that make you feel? And blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't defensive, no defense.
Yeah.
And then because that takes humility and it takes self-control and it takes patience and all those fruits of the spirit. And then I'm going to ask, is there anything else?
Thing more.
What
Yeah.
else? Because there probably is something else. And maybe there's not, but I'll go through that process as many times as I need to go through it until it's like, no, there's nothing else. And then we're done, and then I've got my work to do.
Let me ask you this just I really view your relationship with Nicole very similar to me and Jessica's, right? Which I think we've created, I think, the resilience and the cadence in our relationship that we can like speak to each other honestly. And we view it as exactly that. Like it's data points and we need to understand it. And if we want to evolve into this high level, like great, right? And I think we're both aligned with that. You are with Nicole, I am with Jessica, but there's a lot of marriages out there that aren't in that stepping stone yet. So I think we can all agree we all want tens, right? Let me ask you this though. When I coach a guy and we do the same thing, I ask him, but I ask him from his perspective, but I think we can also do this with our wives, what the example I'm about ready to share. I asked the guy on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your marriage at now? Because 8 out of 10 guys come and do life with us in our group specifically for marriage. And if I hear a 6, right? And I'll be like, okay, explain to me what a 6 feels like. And they'll explain it. They'll be like, well, and there's certain traits. They'll be like, well, we only talk about the parenting stuff. We haven't gotten on dates. There really isn't a whole lot of romance. We're friends, but we don't really talk about deep things. We talk about more managerial things. And, of course he wants to get to a 10. But I think for a guy like that who maybe has been in that 4, 5, or 6 camp for so long, they're like, God bless, man. Like, I think I know what that looks like, but it feels like really unattainable right now. So I always step back and I just say, what's happening if you're a 7? What's happening at the level 7? What would make it a 7? Right. And then as soon as I ask that question, because I've been doing it for years, they're almost like, oh, well, it would probably be this. Or, we would be going out on a date night. We would be talking about, maybe like our vision for the rest of the year together as a couple, or we would plan that vacation that I've been wanting to go with her on for so long. So they start like taking like these bite-sized chunks of what a 7 could look like without this mad dash to the 10. I don't know if you and Nicole have ever gone through anything like that, or if you have just anything to add to that.
No, we haven't gone through anything like that. I like it though. I think the main point, if I'm understanding that right, would be the 6 to the 10's too big a leap that someone feels like I can't maybe take that big chunk, take that big leap, but I can envision the 7 moving one step at a time. Is that kind
Yeah.
of the main point?
It really is. So it's like, for instance, if you take somebody who, let's just say they've never been in fitness their entire life,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And they've never lifted a weight, they've really never watched it. And then suddenly, all the great genetics that were serving them as a kid, where they were skinny and fit, they didn't have to do anything. All of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, they're 150 pounds overweight. So it's like, how did I even get here? I can't even believe I'm here. But how do I start? I've got this 150 pounds to lose, but how do I knock off the first 25? Like,
Right.
what do I need to do? Right.
Yep. And then after they knock off the first 25, well, if you can lose 25, you can lose 100, 125,
Yeah.
right? So yeah,
Right.
100% agree with that. I don't really have more to add to that. I think it's a great point that you bring out, though, for sure.
Yeah. Sometimes I think it's just taking, like, to be honest, like keeping it simple. Right. I mean, I
Yeah.
love your date night thing, but I think what's really important is go to the date prepared, like the date deck, right?
Yeah.
Jessica and I use what's called table
Oh
topics.
yeah.
We use that one. Sometimes I'll just Google 100 questions for married couples, and I'll come up with questions. And the last time we did that, we got through 3 questions and we created a dream business that she's been wanting to do for interior design. Like, we bought the website domain and everything right there at dinner, because this one question turned into this unbelievable conversation about how she was envisioning what this business could look like for her. And I haven't seen her that excited in so long.
How fun.
But just things like that. You gotta come prepared though, right? Which is good.
That's right. I mean,
Um,
it's intentionality, we got to do it.
yeah,
It's worth it. It's worth it. I guess that's what I would say. It's worth it. It takes work. It's like
it
I
does.
got out of the habit of little side thing. I got out of the habit, and it's not marriage related, but I got out of the habit of every Sunday before church making breakfast for our children. And I just got done saying our baby is 16 years old, right? But I got out of the habit the last 3 years, maybe more. But I used to do that when they were young. And it takes intention. I had all these reasons why, like, oh man, these special things I used to make. Well, we didn't have this, we didn't have that, and they don't care. Anyway, long story short, it takes intentionality to think, what am I on Saturday, if not before, like, what am I going to be making tomorrow morning? Do I have what I need? Not just assume, because then if I don't, then I've got an excuse, and making it happen. And I've been doing that even just the last couple months. I think not even 2 months I've been doing it. And a 16 and a 19-year-old are like, this is great. And just seeing, like, with some intention, what it says is, I think what it says is, I love you. You're important. I care about you. They know I've got 101 other things I could be doing that morning. And the same thing applies to our marriage. When we have to put some intention to it, even just the fact that we Googled some questions and brought them to dinner. I mean, what's that say to our wife? It says, you're
Yeah, it's
important.
huge.
It's huge. It's massive.
100%. Dude, this has been great. You are an absolute force to be reckoned with when it comes to your energy, and you're 51, I think, going on 30,
I feel like it.
which
I'm
is
thankful.
right. You look like it too.
Uh,
Like, you told me you're 51. I was like, there's no way. But so I know your book is out now. But beyond your book and that scope, how can men connect with having more Allan Blain in their life?
Yeah, well, if someone wants more Allan Blain in their life, they can get more. They can get more on Instagram or Facebook. It's at Allan B, like my middle initial B, as in boy, Blain, on pretty much everywhere, any social media platform. And Allan has a unique spelling, so I'll spell it. It's
Yes, it does.
yeah, it's A. I don't know if everybody else's mom spelled it right and my mom spelled it wrong, or vice versa, but I'm the minority for sure. But it's ALLAN. Uh, B, and then Blain is BLAIN. No E on Blain. So anyway, at Allan B Blain on any of the social media stuff. And then probably the simplest place, because it's all there, is allanblain.com.
So it's really fascinating, because, like, if you just omit the E's where you think they should be, you should be very easy to find.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Exactly.
Very good. Hey guys, you're not going to have to look far for Allan. We'll have all his social links and all that. And a link to his book as well. If you head on over to thedadedge.com/439 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/439 for this show. This show is brought to you by a free resource that I created for you guys called 25 Intimate Conversation Starters. I'll have a link in the show notes for you there as well. It's just a quick video training on the psychology of why, what Allan and I were talking about today, why conversation starters and why having good questions that lead with curiosity and appreciation just do really, really well for connection and conversation with your wife. And again, that's totally free. You'll get the video training as well as the 25 questions as well in a PDF form. Allan, this was awesome. You are a force to be reckoned with. I'm so glad that we got connected. I'm so happy that your book is coming out. You're going to help other people. And I just wish you all the best luck in the world, my friend.
Larry, I can't thank you enough for having me on here and getting to share a little bit of my story with your guest. You're the rock star, my friend. Keep up the great work.
Oh, back at you, man. Gentlemen, let's continue to be the rock stars in our own life. As I always say, and I know you guys hear it every single week, but go out, live legendary. Life is short. Legacy is forever. Live the legendary life that you were meant to live. All we have to do is say yes to it, step into it, and do the tactical things that we talked about today. And that's also in Allan's book as well. Go out, live legendary, gentlemen.